Now, many questions around the NHI remain unanswered, and we talk more about this with the Chair of Social Security at Wits School of Governance, that's Alex van den Heever. Alex, thank you for your time and welcome to the program. Let's start with perhaps your opinion on whether or not you think this is the best healthcare model from government. And we've seen support coming in from the South African Medical Association. The World Health Organization as well has joined, the voices supporting the NHI. But do you think this is the best we have?
Well, to answer the first question, no, I don't. And I also think that the kind of support given by WHO and South African Medical Association are very shallow. We've got a real debate on health reform in South Africa that has to get into the detail and not this kind of glib, superficial, kind of very general support for very general ideas of universal coverage. Creating a health system requires real work. Requires a dedication to good, well-governed systems, and we haven't had that history in South Africa. And the NHI proposals themselves do not propose a well-governed structure at all. It actually proposes the opposite. So I think that we've got serious challenges with this proposal, and I don't think that we should get caught up with what is essentially very superficial kind of noises of support and get to the detail.
And let's talk about some of those details, especially starting with who are some of the figures and I suppose power structures that are behind the healthcare system in South Africa. These are the people that make all these decisions with regards to South Africans' health.
Well, what you're talking about, the South African Medical Association, those groups, they don't make the decisions about South Africa's health. They're a representative of a special interest group. And many of the doctors don't agree with this framework and are not really part of that process. That's really just the top structure making these kinds of suggestions. But South African Medical Association doesn't really deal with strategic health reform, and many of the other private players, if they're offered a deal within this environment, they will say whatever they think will suit their business needs going forward. We need to basically get below what is essentially just superficial noise and deal with the actual facts. And there is no consensus on what kind of structure we're looking at going forward. And there is no design in this bill, apart from the idea that they're just proposing a fund and then they will muddle through with some structure down the line.
And let's talk about the funding, which is called for concern for many people, asking where is the money coming from. We've just listened to the clip before we had our conversation that the funding will also come from what government already has within their budget. Is that enough, especially with the weakening economy?
Well, one of the unusual aspects of this proposal is that they're proposing to raise a tax to fund people who are higher income, who are self-funding their care through medical schemes. That's not what you do in a universal coverage strategy. Typically, your strategy is to cover people who are not covered.
Right.
So in this environment, you're raising a redistributive tax to fund people who are essentially self-paying. So it's the equivalent of saying you're not going to be able to take up hire ADT anymore. You're going to have to use your local police station, and we're going to raise what you would have paid to ADT and spend it on our police force, and you will get a good service.
And moving forward, I mean, how do you think the NHI should be managed? And if not, then what do you propose should be an alternative to it?
Right, so there's two aspects that I think are important. The first issue is whether or not you should have another state-owned enterprise with a minister appointing everybody into every part of the structure. So you have two bodies that are mentioned. One is the Office of Health Standards Compliance, which accredits bodies, and you have the NHI fund, which will contract with supposedly everybody. And so you've got a licensing structure and you've got a procurement structure, and you've got a minister appointing people into both. So the key areas of corruption in our system at the moment are appointments of staff, and there's particularly the top management, procurement, and licensing. And those are the three things that the minister appoints everybody to. That is not how you create a coherent governance structure. All of our SOEs have that framework, and it's why they have all failed and all been captured simultaneously across the board, from SARS to PIC to Transnet to Eskom. Why would this fund be different? So that's the one key feature. The second one is that they're proposing to centralize purchasing, the procurement of health services at a national level, which institutions, countries around the world do not do. They decentralize the purchasing. They don't centralize. So this is completely wrong. This can't work institutionally.
All right, Alex, well, thank you so much for joining us right here on Tonight, South Africa Tonight.